Lexi dashed out of the towering building, her heels clicking against the pavement. She glanced down at her wrist, her heart sinking as she read the time on her gleaming silver watch. "Good heavens!" she exclaimed, a note of panic tingling her voice. "I've run out of time!" Without missing a beat, she darted towards the nearby subway station, her heels echoing off the concrete. The day was slipping away faster than she had anticipated, and she was running late for a momentous occasion in her life. This wasn't just any ordinary dinner. It was her first meal with Parker's parents, a significant milestone in their relationship. Every second counted, and she could only hope she wouldn't be too late. Lexi and Parker had reached a vital decision in their relationship. They wanted to get married at the earliest opportunity. They had attempted living independently, keeping their lives separate, but it proved unsuccessful. The distance between them only served to emphasize their longing for one another. It became clear that if they were to become a committed couple, sharing their day-to-day life, the only feasible step was to cement their bond through marriage. This unification would not only bring them closer physically, but also symbolize their earnest commitment to a shared future. Lexi, however, had been somewhat less enthusiastic about the idea of marriage. In her mind, marriage wasn't a prerequisite for them to be together. It wasn't a fundamental requirement for her. She believed in their bond and felt that their commitment to each other could endure without the need for a formal ceremony or a signed certificate. Yet, Parker firmly believed in the sanctity of marriage. He was eager to proclaim their love to the world and wanted no secrets about his wife's identity. He didn't wish to hide the fact that he was married. Quite the opposite, in fact. He wanted everyone to know that he had the privilege of being married to a wonderful woman like Lexi. He wanted to proudly announce to the world that he was the husband of an incredible, beautiful woman. His enthusiasm was as clear as day, shining as brightly as his love for Lexi. "Parker," Lexi asked, her voice laced with apprehension, "are you certain about this? What if your parents don't approve of me?" Parker replied with a half smile. "Honestly, I don't doubt my parents would be completely satisfied with anyone I chose to be with. They would prefer to make the choice themselves, but any relationship they arranged probably wouldn't last very long." Lexi fixed Parker with a skeptical gaze. "So, have they already handpicked a partner for you?" Parker immediately shook his head, assuring her, "Absolutely not, darling. To tell you the truth, I have no idea what they're plotting. Nor am I interested in it. My father understands me very well. If we end up in disagreement, I won't hesitate to walk away. I don't rely on their money. I don't crave their privileges. They may believe that I'll do anything for their wealth, but I'm determined to earn my own future." Parker's words were filled with conviction, his resolve to establish his own path clear and strong. He was ready to stand up for his love, regardless of his parents' views. Lexi fell into a thoughtful silence, processing Parker's words. She understood that his family dynamics were complex, with arguments and disagreements brewing beneath the surface. She couldn't help but wonder about the situation she was potentially stepping into. She had no desire to be embroiled in family disputes. More than anything else, the thought of being a catalyst for further strife within Parker's family filled her with unease. She loved Parker, but she also valued peace and harmony. As she contemplated her future, she knew she would need to tread carefully, balancing her relationship with Parker and her interactions with his family. "Parker, sweetheart," Lexi began cautiously, her voice full of genuine concern. "Please don't misunderstand me. I understand the significance of family, but I really don't want to become a source of discord between you and your parents." Parker turned towards Lexi, looking deeply into her eyes. He offered her a warm, understanding smile and pulled her into a comforting embrace. "You won't be the cause of my strife," he assured her, his voice filled with firm conviction. "If there's any tension between my parents and me, it would stem from their elitist attitudes, not from you. I don't know what has come over to them lately. It's almost as if their mentalities have regressed to medieval times. And it's not just them. People are acting peculiar these days. It seems like the more wealth they acquire, the more outlandish they become." His words provided Lexi with some comfort, confirming that he was well aware of the peculiar attitudes of his family and was prepared to handle them. He wanted to ensure she understood that she was not a part of the problem. Lexi and Parker's first encounter was a product of pure chance. They found themselves on the bustling stands of a football match, engrossed in the thrilling spectacle. Each passionately supported one of the rival teams that were battling out on the field. As fate would have it, these two ardent supporters of longtime rival teams ended up side by side, their seats coincidentally adjacent. Their passionate cheers and playful banter would serve as the opening chapter of their unexpected romance. As the game progressed, the fervor of the fans intensified. One of them cracked a joke about one of the teams, which drew hearty laughs from everyone around, including Parker. However, Lexi's serious expression clearly indicated that she was supporting the team at the receiving end of the jest. That's when Parker, unable to resist temptation, began teasing Lexi. His jokes and playful mockery of her team added a lighthearted twist to their encounter. Despite their opposing loyalties, the banter between them began to weave the first threads of their connection. Their interaction started out as friendly jabs, but soon escalated into a spirited exchange, their voices rising above the cheers of the crowd. They passionately defended their teams, arguing about the merits of their favorite players and criticizing the others, but as they continued, their initial indignation began to give way to amusement. Before long, they were laughing together, their attention straying from the unfolding match. The tense football rivalry faded into the background, replaced by the camaraderie they hadn't expected to find. Recognizing the connection, Parker suggested moving to a quieter location where they could continue their conversation without the noise of the crowd. They left the roaring bleachers behind, their focus now on each other rather than the game they had initially come to watch. Lexi hailed from a humble family, one that was frugal yet content with their modest lifestyle. Her father, Daniel, had a profound love for his daughter. Although their family wasn't financially struggling, they didn't enjoy the luxuries of the well-to-do either. They lived a simple life, making the most of what they had. One of the few gifts Daniel could afford to give his beloved daughter was the gift of self-defense. He enrolled her in karate classes. Daniel had concerns about whether Lexi would appreciate karate. After all, it was a physically demanding and rigorous sport, known for its intensity. His decision to introduce her to karate was not random though. He worked as a janitor at the local karate dojo and had observed the children training there. He had noticed their discipline, the respect they showed their trainers, and the mutual respect that was propagated in the dojo. Lexi embraced the world of martial arts wholeheartedly. In fact, she not only excelled in karate, but also ventured into Muay Thai, a combat sport known for its grueling intensity and technique. During her college years, she juggled her academic responsibilities with her martial arts training, never compromising on either. She participated in numerous competitions, pushing her physical and mental limits each time. This dedication allowed her to refine her skills and deepen her understanding of the sport. Daniel was a father brimming with pride for his daughter Lexi. As an only child, Lexi was the sole beacon of joy in Daniel's life. He had initially yearned for a son, a desire born out of several tragic circumstances. Heartbreakingly, Daniel had lost his first 3 sons in utero. These losses were particularly hard to understand and accept for Daniel, who himself had been born prematurely at 7 months. He couldn't comprehend why this tragedy kept befalling him. Why were his sons not making it into the world? Daniel's elderly aunt lived in solitude in a small settlement, her quaint house perched on a hill. She was a woman of deep wisdom, one who believed in the unique significance and purpose behind each occurrence in life. After the devastating loss of his 3rd son, a distraught Daniel found himself driving to his aunt's house, seeking solace and perhaps some answers. On the way, he bought a bottle of whiskey, considering the option of numbing his grief with its potent content. However, he decided to abstain from drinking until he had spoken to his aunt. Throughout his life, he had often sought her counsel during times of crisis, valuing her wisdom and insight. After he finished sharing his heart-rending dilemma with her, his aunt took a deep, contemplative breath. Then, to his surprise, she responded with a gentle smile. Confused and a bit irritated, Daniel looked at his aunt. It seemed to him that she was somehow making light of his heartbreaking situation, and this made him seethe internally. But her next words would forever change his perspective and heal his emotional turmoil. "Do you remember that you were born prematurely at 7 months, Daniel?" she asked calmly. "Of course. But what does that have to do with anything?" he retorted, impatient and still on edge. "Your mother was a remarkably resilient woman. She too faced her own battles before she had you. She lost 3 daughters, all of whom were stillborn before your arrival," she said gently. At that moment, comprehension dawned on Daniel, and he understood why his aunt had responded with a smile. She was not laughing at his sorrow, but drawing his attention to the uncanny symmetry between his own struggles and his mother's. This realization brought him a strange sense of comfort and acceptance. "Daniel, You know how much I love you, and you were indeed a special child for all of us." His aunt continued, a fondness in her eyes as she spoke of the past. A year after his enlightening conversation with Aunt Amy, Lexi was born. From the moment he held his baby girl, Daniel knew that she was going to be an extraordinary child. And Lexi didn't disappoint. She was everything Daniel could have hoped for and more. She was the embodiment of all the qualities he had wanted to see in his offspring. Bright and intelligent, Lexi excelled academically, her report cards filled with impressive grades. But her talents weren't limited to academics. She was equally passionate about sports, an interest that would later lead her to martial arts. Lexi was indeed the ultimate child in Daniel's eyes, a source of immense pride and joy for her father. In stark contrast to Lexi's modest upbringing, Parker hailed from a family of considerable wealth. His family lived in such luxury that they could afford to hire a personal chef one week and on a whim dismissed him the next, only to hire another one from abroad. His lifestyle was a testament to their affluence, a world away from Lexi's simple, modest beginnings. Despite their starkly different backgrounds, Lexi and Parker found it surprisingly easy to connect. In the beginning, they tread carefully, revealing little about themselves, as if trying to navigate an unfamiliar terrain. But soon, this caution began to wane. Their attraction was akin to that of powerful magnets, irresistibly drawn towards each other, defying all external influences. They had been dating for the past 8 months, learning and growing together. Parker was a spirited, easygoing individual. He enjoyed the occasional party and fun gatherings, but when it came to matters of intimacy, he respected Lexi's choices and boundaries. Lexi, with her humble upbringing, held a more serious outlook towards relationships. She believed that if her relationship wasn't meaningful and serious, then it wasn't worth investing time and energy. This belief, rooted in her simple background, influenced her approach towards her relationship with Parker. After 8 wonderful months together, Parker decided to take their relationship a step further. "Darling, I can't bear to wake up alone every day anymore. I want you by my side," he earnestly confessed, offering his heart to her. Overwhelmed with joy, Lexi accepted this proposal. However, her happiness was quickly overshadowed by the looming thought of Parker's parents. She voiced her concern. "What are you going to tell your parents?" "They'll have to accept you. If they don't, they risk losing their only son," Parker declared, his resolve unwavering. "But maybe we should—" Lexi started, but Parker cut her off. "No, you're going to be my wife. I refuse to hide you or our relationship. I want to proudly proclaim to the world that you are mine," he said, a determined look in his eyes. Lexi nodded, her worries beginning to subside. She wondered about Parker's parents' reaction, but with Parker firmly by her side, she felt reassured. Slowly she began to calm down, realizing that perhaps she had been fretting unnecessarily. That's how Lexi had felt, right up until this day, the day of the dinner with Parker's parents. They had arranged to meet at a restaurant, a seemingly neutral territory. Parker had assured her that it was just going to be a casual dinner, a simple meet and greet. "You're just going to meet my parents and have a friendly chat," he had said, attempting to alleviate her concerns. However, Lexi couldn't shake off the feeling that she was about to be put under intense scrutiny, examined under a metaphorical microscope. The notions filled her with a sense of unease, a flutter of nervous anticipation brewing in the pit of her stomach. Despite Parker's reassuring words, she couldn't help but feel like she was heading into an important examination where she would be judged and evaluated. Rushing into her apartment, Lexi glanced at the clock. She still had about 2 hours before the dinner, but the restaurant was on the other side of the city, making her feel pressed for time. In her hurried state, she was attempting to apply her mascara with one hand while trying to zip up her dress with the other. Unfortunately, she wasn't having much luck with either task. A near miss with the mascara wand left her eye reddening, and her repeated attempts to force the stubborn zipper resulted in it breaking. Stopping in her tracks, Lexi took a deep breath. She gazed at her own flustered reflection in the mirror and offered herself a small, encouraging smile. "Alright, slow down, girl. It's okay. What's the worst thing that can happen, huh?" "Exactly, so just relax and take it easy. Whatever happens, happens." With that pep talk, she took a moment to regroup. She gently washed the hastily applied makeup off her face and returned to her room to change out of the ill-fitted dress. Pulling out a pair of comfortable jeans and a light sweater from her wardrobe, she held them up, examining them. A sense of calm washing over her, She dressed in the more casual attire, deciding to be herself for the evening ahead. In her calmer state, Lexi reflected on her earlier frenzy. She realized she had been unnecessarily rushing and pressuring herself. After all, nobody had sought her opinion about the dinner venue, and where had she gotten the idea to wear an evening dress for a simple family dinner? Her wardrobe did contain a couple of fancy dresses, exactly 2 of them. In a moment of emotional impulse after her breakup with Alex, she had splurged her entire salary on these 2 garments. Alex had ended their relationship, criticizing her for being too simple. He had told her he needed someone more sophisticated, as he put it. The memory still stung, but Lexi knew better now. She was not going to let anyone else's opinion shape her identity or her choices. She was proud of her simplicity and authenticity. They were part of her identity, an identity which she had no intention of changing for anyone else. With a last-minute dash, Lexi managed to board the train just as the doors were about to close. Panting slightly from her sprint, she took a moment to catch her breath and calm her racing heart. That was quite the dash, she mused to herself, a faint smile playing on her lips. She gave herself a quick once-over, ensuring she hadn't suffered any mishaps during her sprint. To her relief, she looked perfectly presentable. Her swift run hadn't caused any unfortunate stains or mishaps on her clothes while she was hurdling obstacles. Looking neat and composed, she started to relax, preparing herself mentally for the dinner that awaited her. With a 20-minute train ride ahead, Lexi decided to use this time to relax and gather her thoughts. She found an available seat in the half-empty train carriage. As the rhythmic sound of the wheels against the tracks filled the air, the blur of subway walls punctuated by the lights of passing stations filled her vision. She lost herself in thoughts about what the evening might bring. She had a nagging suspicion that this wouldn't be the casual, friendly family dinner Parker had described. Could Parker have been misleading her, perhaps downplaying the significance of the evening to prevent her from getting anxious? Was she about to walk into a situation far bigger and more complicated than she had expected? As they returned to their seats, their laughter filling the carriage, Lexi rose to help the fallen man. The men watched her, one of them sarcastically commenting, "Look at her, such a sweet girl, aiding the poor old man." She shot them a disdainful look but said nothing. Their laughter resumed, and they began to toss an empty beer can at the elder. Feeling a mixture of anxiety and anger, Lexi finally spoke up. "You should all be utterly ashamed of yourself. What did he do to deserve this?" The carriage fell silent for a moment before they all burst into laughter again. Remembering the words of her coach, "Only strike first when there is no other way," she sat back down. At that moment, it didn't seem necessary to escalate the situation further. The drunk man seemed to lose interest. However, as soon as she sat down, a ginger-haired man began to approach her. Recognizing a potential threat, Lexi relied on her instincts and did not wait for the man to show a clear sign of aggression. She struck first, landing a solid kick to his solar plexus. He doubled over, gasping for breath and sinking back into his seat. Instantly, 2 more of the group advanced on her, but Lexi, with the element of surprise on her side, managed to fend them off within a minute. They were evidently taken aback by her aggression. When they attempted to grab her, she landed a powerful kick on one man's shin, sending him sprawling. The 4th man rose to his feet and Lexi sternly warned him, "Don't even try it." Rather than react aggressively, the 4th man simply assisted his remaining companion to his feet and guided him off the train. As the carriage came to a stop, they stumbled out, leaving behind the chaos they had created. Lexi then moved to sit beside the elderly man, asking, "Are you all right, sir?" His face lit up in appreciation, and he replied with a twinkle in his eyes, "If I were 50 years younger, I'd ask you out right now." Lexi's response was a robust laugh. "Thank you," she said, still chuckling. "I'm sorry for the trouble earlier. I'll be getting off at the next stop." The old man slowly rose and responded, "Coincidentally, that's my stop too." Both of them exited the train together, waving their farewells as they parted ways. Lexi rushed towards her destination, a nearby restaurant. The old man watched her receding figure until she disappeared into the distance. "Parker, wouldn't it be prudent to arrive a bit earlier? She's meeting the parents after all." Parker glanced at his wristwatch and then at his mother. "Well, Mom, you mentioned the reservation was for 7. It's just 10 minutes to 7. If you'd said 6:50, I bet she'd be here at exactly 6:50. Parker's father, Kevin Martinez, struggled to hide his amused smirk from his wife. Soon, Lexi emerged at the entrance. Parker rose to greet her, and his mother sighed in disapproval. Oh goodness, she didn't even bother to wear a dress for the occasion? Kevin, however, studied Lexi with a more approving gaze. Now, honey, I think she looks just fine. Look at her, she's a charming young woman. He turned to his wife, adding, not everyone needs to dress like they're in a parade. Mrs. Kimberly Martinez had no chance to respond, as the young couple had already arrived at the table. Following greetings and a brief exchange, everyone settled into their seats. Kimberly watched with a haughty air as the waitress set the table. Lexi noticed how the waitress placed a full set of cutlery in front of everyone else, but only a fork and spoon for her. A surge of anger welled up inside her, and Parker noticed it too. Mom, seriously? What on earth is this about? Parker was prepared for his mother's antics, but this was beyond anything he expected. What's the matter? I don't want to overwhelm her. I don't think she's accustomed to dining etiquette, Kimberly retorted, scanning the shocked faces around the table before adding defensively, What? Don't give me that look. I'm actually looking out for her. Lexi had never found herself in such a situation before. She knew she needed to leave, but seeing the disappointment on Parker's face made her hesitate. She cared deeply for Parker and didn't want to lose him. She looked at him again. He was staring at his mother, silent. Something was off. She had expected him to defend her. Taking one last look at the table and its occupants, she flashed a tight smile and began to rise from her seat. Kimberly caught her movement and quickly turned to address her. Sweetheart, are you leaving already? At least have a glass of water? Lexi shook her head, preparing to make her exit, when suddenly a familiar voice echoed through the restaurant. What a shame you can't handle the situation as you did on the train, the familiar voice boomed. Darling, if my grandson isn't what you were expecting, remember, I'm still on the market. You could always become his grandma instead. Lexi's eyebrows shot up as she recognized the elderly man from the train. Oh my God, it's you. Indeed it is, he replied with a chuckle. Don't mind my daughter-in-law here. She only recently became acquainted with fine dining etiquette. Before that, a spoon was all she knew how to handle. His laughter filled the room as Kimberly shot a stern look at her husband. Kevin rose to greet his father, hugging him warmly. Hey Dad, you took the train again? How many times have I told you to just take a cab? Or at least give us a call? I do enjoy a bit of adventure, Grandpa Carl responded nonchalantly. He then moved to sit beside Lexi, extending his hand in a gesture for her to sit back down. Sweetheart, please take a seat. I assure you that no one will hurt your feelings here. While my grandson is busy calculating the right thing to say, I promise to shield you from this delightful lady, he said, his eyes twinkling with mischief. Kimberly managed a tight smirk, seething silently. She had desperately hoped that her unpredictable father-in-law wouldn't make an appearance today. His sharp-tongued comments had a knack for undermining her, something she intensely disliked. Despite being a millionaire, the elderly man had a penchant for public transportation. Above all, he took great delight in traveling on foot. He still held ownership of the businesses he had painstakingly built over the years. Often he'd mentioned his intentions to transfer ownership to his son, but his worries regarding his daughter-in-law consistently held him back. However, approximately 6 months ago, he had finally made the decision to let his son and his family assume control of his thriving business empire. From the moment Carl entrusted his business to his son and daughter-in-law, their world took on a different shape. Parker's father, Kevin, had been raised with every necessity at his disposal. In contrast, Kevin's wife, Kimberly, always prioritized money above all else. Now, having come into wealth, she was perpetually anxious about maintaining it. This constant fear of finding someone who might deplete their wealth was a driving force behind her unrelenting scrutiny of Parker's potential life partners. As everyone began to tuck into their salads, Carl regaled the table with the tale of his unexpected encounter with Lexi on the train. Kimberly's only response was a tight-lipped silence. Kevin expressed his heartfelt gratitude to Lexi for what she did, while Parker sat quietly, visibly astounded by the unfolding situation. Noticing Parker's stunned silence, Grandpa playfully reached over and gently shut his grandson's agape mouth. Parker leaned in, whispering into Lexi's ear, "What else don't I know about you?" Meeting his gaze calmly, Lexi responded, "I suppose we're even now." At that moment, Lexi directed a more piercing look towards Parker. "Tell me, did you know about this?" She gestured towards the mere spoon and fork that had been placed before her. "Of course not. Do you think I would let this happen if I knew?" Parker protested. Regardless of whether Parker had known about it or not, Lexi found herself less bothered. The waitstaff had brought her a complete set of utensils at Grandpa Carl's request. As the dishes started arriving at the table, it was clear that Mrs. Martinez's mood had taken a significant downturn. Once dinner concluded and everyone started to head towards the parking lot, Carl voiced his intention to stay at the restaurant with Lexi for a bit longer. "If you don't mind spending some time chatting with your fiancé, of course," Carl added, turning to Parker. Without voicing a response, Parker gave a silent nod, and the rest of the family proceeded to depart. Seated comfortably in the gradually emptying restaurant, Carl shared his life story with Lexi. He spoke of his humble beginnings, starting a business crafting leather boots, and how it eventually burgeoned into a large corporation. He admitted candidly to Lexi that his son Kevin had grown up with all his needs catered for. Kevin's first wife had tragically passed away during childbirth, leaving behind a son named Mark who lived separately from the family. Despite the distance, Mark was a considered young man who played an integral part in running the company. In fact, he was currently serving as the CEO. Carl opened up to Lexi, sharing the intimate details of his son's life. He explained that Kevin had once been a man full of passion and enthusiasm, but the tragic loss of his first wife during childbirth had profoundly impacted him. The tragedy left Kevin adrift, a shell of the man he once was, bereft of any interest or enthusiasm for life. For a considerable period, Kevin didn't consider remarrying. He was submerged in his grief, living life like a man going through the motions. However, everything changed when he crossed paths with Kimberly. Kimberly, a single mother with a 2-year-old son named Parker, managed to secure a place in Kevin's life. Carl, who had observed their budding relationship from the sidelines, grew increasingly certain that Kimberly had skillfully manipulated his vulnerable son into marriage. Despite his concerns, Kevin and Kimberly wed. Carl observed these changes with a wary eye, silently hoping for the best while preparing for the worst. "Lexi, this may sound odd, but would you like to meet my other grandson, Mark? I believe you might find him quite interesting," Carl suggested. Given that she was already engaged to Parker, she made a conscious effort to gently refuse Carl's proposal to meet Mark. "I appreciate the offer, sir, but I'm in love with Parker. He might be navigating a complex situation with his mother, but we've had some truly wonderful times together." Carl's respect for Lexi escalated even further after hearing her response. "I admire your commitment and your choice," he responded. "I believe you will make a wonderful spouse for my grandson." A few days later, at Parker's behest, Lexi found herself meeting up with him. Their conversation started off on a light note, engaging in casual banter, but the direction of their discussion soon took an unexpected detour. Out of the blue, Parker began to open up emotionally. He confessed that he felt he hadn't been as committed and caring a partner to Lexi as he ought to have been. There was a deep-seated insecurity within him, a sense of inadequacy that seemed to loom over his thoughts. He admitted that he was so accustomed to the incessant pressure exerted by his mother that he was unsure whether he could function without it. Despite everything, Lexi felt a strong pull towards giving Parker a second chance. She held genuine love and care for him, and these feelings pushed her to see beyond his vulnerabilities and to believe in the potential for their relationship to heal and grow stronger. "I have to be honest, Lexi," Parker suddenly confessed. "I don't really love you. Not in the way you deserve. I'm so sorry. From the very beginning, it was your confidence that attracted me. I was trying to understand how I could be more like you." The sudden confession hit Lexi like a punch in the stomach. Parker's eyes were filled with remorse and discomfort as he laid bare his truth. The confident, cheerful man she thought she knew seemed to have been replaced by this anxious, guilt-ridden version of him. "I never meant to hurt you," he continued, struggling to maintain eye contact. "You see, Lexi," he continued, his voice just above a whisper, "I've been living in the shadow of my mother's expectations for so long that I've lost touch with who I am, with who I want to be. When I met you, I saw a glimpse of the freedom I crave. I saw a person who isn't afraid to be herself, who stands up for what she believes in." A heavy silence hung between them, and in that moment, Lexi realized the true extent of the disarray in Parker's life. She looked at him, her heart aching for the confused, lost man in front of her. His confession had turned their world upside down, but it had also shone a light on the challenges he was facing, challenges she had been oblivious to until now. As Lexi observed Parker's confession, a sense of understanding washed over her. Surprisingly, she didn't feel a surge of anger or disappointment. Instead, She felt gratitude towards Parker for being honest and vulnerable with her. Taking a deep breath, Lexi mustered the courage to respond, her voice filled with compassion. "Thank you for sharing your feelings with me, Parker. It takes a lot of courage to be this open. I appreciate your honesty." The rest of their meeting was filled with an awkward silence, each lost in their own whirlpool of thoughts. In the aftermath of the breakup, Lexi discovered that she didn't need an extensive healing process. She recognized that Parker had used her as a means to explore his own insecurities and desires for personal growth. While she acknowledged feeling a sense of being taken advantage of, she made a conscious effort not to let anger consume her. Instead, Lexi viewed the experience as a valuable life lesson. A couple of months later, while Lexi was going about her grocery shopping, she unexpectedly crossed paths with Carl in the store. Their faces lit up with joy as they embraced and began to chat, catching up on recent events. "I heard about you and Parker. I'm truly sorry, Lexi," Carl expressed his condolences. With a gentle smile, Lexi replied, "Thank you, Mr. Martinez. I've moved on from it. We all make mistakes, and it was a valuable learning experience." In that moment, a tall and attractive young man approached, carrying bags of groceries. It was Mark, Carl's grandson. "Grandpa, are you ready to go?" Mark asked, glancing at Lexi and letting out a sigh. "Mark, meet my old friend Lexi," Carl introduced with a smile. Mark looked at his grandfather, amused, and then turned to Lexi. "Grandpa, please tell me you didn't set everything up. Hi, Lexi. I've heard quite a bit about you." Lexi burst into laughter, shaking her head at the unexpected turn of events. She glanced at Carl, who seemed genuinely surprised by Mark's remark. "What on earth are you talking about, Mark?" Carl responded, seemingly perplexed. "Lexi, Mark happens to be a remarkable chef. Would you care to join us for dinner sometime?" Lexi's laughter filled the air as she found amusement in Mark's playful accusation. She looked at Carl, her eyes twinkling with mirth, and shook her head in disbelief. "I can assure you, Mark, your grandpa had nothing to do with our encounter," Lexi replied, still smiling. "And I would be honored to have dinner with both of you. It sounds like a wonderful opportunity to try your culinary expertise, Mark." Mark's expression softened into a warm smile, appreciating Lexi's good humor. "I'll make sure to prepare something special for our dinner," he said. As the trio made their way to the checkout, a sense of serendipity filled the air. Lexi felt grateful for the chance encounter and the unexpected connection she had forged with Carl and now with Mark. Perhaps this meeting was not just a coincidence, but a new chapter unfolding in her life. In the weeks that followed, Lexi and Mark grew closer, sharing meals together and discovering common interests. Their friendship blossomed naturally, based on genuine connection and shared experiences. Lexi found comfort in Mark's kindness and understanding, and Mark admired Lexi's resilience and positive outlook. As time went on, their friendship gradually developed into something more. They supported each other in their personal journeys and celebrated the joys of life together. Their connection was built on trust, mutual respect, and a shared appreciation for each other's unique qualities. In the end, Lexi realized that the unexpected turn of events had brought her to a place where she felt genuinely happy and fulfilled. She had learned to embrace life's surprises and find beauty in unexpected connections. And as she walked hand in hand with Mark, she knew that the future held new adventures and possibilities, a testament to the resilience of the human heart and the power of second chances.